What's up, everyone, and welcome to Play Hard and Love Big Radio, the official podcast of Spotted Dog Yoga and Sup, based out of Folsom, California. Check us out at spotteddogyoga.com. Play Hard and Love Big Radio is dedicated to bringing you the inspirational people and inspirational content to help you live a more purposeful, passionate, and healthy life. And we have an amazing guest today, someone who is one of my favorite people in the world. And I'm not the only one that feels that way. I guarantee you, she is so awesome. And I'm so excited to have you here. Mary Lyn Jenkins, what's up? And welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here, Nick. It's, what do I even say first? It's a long-standing relationship that you and I have, isn't it? Long-standing friendship, lots of phases. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm just thankful for you and thankful to have been invited on. So thank you.
My pleasure, of course. I think that you and I both agree, and we've talked about this at different stages in our relationship, that you're like a big sister to me, and I'm like a little brother to you.
I'm glad you said big sister and not like a mom. I could probably cross over between those two. But yeah, big sister, thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, it is that way. We didn't, that wasn't ever formal in language, but I think it's definitely how I see you. And I've loved watching you grow and be put in situations that you have navigated, not without challenge for sure, but just with a lot of grace and really stepping into manhood for sure. Marriage, having kids, business choices, moving. Those are like big things to do that actually turn us, I think, from a kid into an adult. And you've done it with a lot of grace, and you've stepped into those things, and chosen to be a man about it, but also kept such a lighthearted spirit about so many things. And I know that that's not easy to do, to have that lens of lightheartedness when things get hard.
Thank you. And I, also on top of that, I want to say that I couldn't have done it without the help of a lot of people, including yourself. And I just remembered when you said that about the move and our business and whatnot, and during 2020, when our studio was really struggling, and a lot of businesses were struggling and whatnot. But I remember we had a phone conversation. It was like over an hour. We had a conversation about what was going on in my life. And you just asked like all these great questions and helped me get to a place where I felt a little bit more at peace with the way that the world was at that moment in time. And also I felt more at peace with who I was as a person, because I just wasn't quite sure. I was like on uneven ground, and it really was a pivotal moment for me to have that conversation with you. And people in life need other people to have conversations with them. It's we can't just do it by ourselves.
Yeah. It's so funny you're saying that, because I just said this week, and I've actually told my daughter this. So I have a lovely, almost 17-year-old daughter, who it kind of frightens me, some of the things that I tell her, because I probably shouldn't say everything that, that comes to mind in the moment, but, I'm really good with people about 10 years older than me or older. And I'm really good with people 7, 10 or younger years below me, because I need those people in my life that are, that have gone before me. And I'm 51 now. So it's taken me a long time to actually recognize that about myself, because I think for so long when you're growing up, you want friends, you want to be liked. And it's just, it's just human nature. We want to be liked. We want friends. We're put into classrooms with people that are our same ages. We go through, if we go through college, we're generally going through, a series of years with people that are within, a year or two of our age. And so on this other side of all those, growth years, I started kind of recognizing like, I'm actually not that good with women my own age. I'm really not, and I have some really, really great friends. I've just, small group, your circle, your deep, deep, deep circle gets smaller and smaller. And I've been okay with that too, the older I've gotten. But the people that I really, really love being around are particularly in the world of women who are older than me that are willing to pour into me wisdom, insight. I mean, it's like, I just am like at their feet, clinging to whatever they want to teach me because I know they've been there before in marriage and parenting, in business. And then also, I guess maybe that's instilled in me. Oh, I get to be that for people younger than I am. Not that I have any of the answers, but I realize that that's just sort of the cycle of life. Like, oh, there's women who actually I could support with that. I can, I'd love to be a sounding board for them in that challenge or whatever. So, yeah, those are fun. Those are fun realizations that we can have about ourselves. Like, oh yeah, I'm really best in these types of circles. And that probably is part of our friendship too, is that I'm a big sister to you. So
yeah, I think that's interesting that you bring that up. And obviously in our relationship, right, you're 10 years older than I am. And when's your birthday?
August.
You're an August baby, huh?
Yeah. When's yours?
I'm a January baby. I'm 41. Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly 10 years. Exactly.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, that you mentioned that because I do also have the best relationships with men and women who are 10 years older than me or 10 years younger than me. I feel like, and up until this point, to what you're speaking to, I didn't really have much insight or even put much thought into that. But I do agree with you. I think that there is this level of experience that, when shared, is the most impactful and the most interesting to me. And also, when I see something in someone else who is younger and I see the potential in them, and from my experience think that they can be up to great things, I want to share with them in a way that empowers them to live their best life. And and that also includes me sharing those things about me, those vulnerable things about me that I'm not necessarily proud of that I did, but that are a part of who I am, and that maybe like could inspire someone to like move in a different direction than I did, so that they could get more out of life in moments that I lit and moments that I missed. So I think
it's cool when you even like what you're doing right now, just recognizing it and then putting language to it. It always kind of elevates you to just, oh wow, that is actually you're kind of cracking your own code, when you get into a conversation like this about things like that. And I mean, just total transparency. So I've moved all over. I've lived on the West Coast. I mean, of course, I grew up in the South. That's where my accent comes from. But I lived on the West Coast for 10 years. I moved back to the Florida coast, and I've been here for over 15 years. And so geography has nothing to do with it. It's, being wherever you are, there you are. And there are your qualities and there are your characteristics, and there are people that start showing you more of who you are because you're involved with them. And I definitely, it is a code that I've cracked about myself. And I'm grateful to actually be able to say like, oh my gosh, my two best friends on the West Coast to this day, they're 8 years older than I am. At the time, I didn't really think about it that much, but now I realize who they were for me when I moved out there. how I could pass my baby off to them, and they would hold, one of them was she represented me. I was in the design world, and, she was a mentor, but she also became one of my best friends. So it's fun because once we can start putting language to things, I think it supports us in how we can move through life. Not that I dodge women my own age, or people my own age, but
Yeah.
I just know, like, if I really want to go through my days being of value to people, those are the kinds of people that I feel I'm most fulfilled in those types of relationships, and I can also offer value to people more in those relationships. So, yeah, you're cracking your code, Nick.
Cracking the code,
Crack
man.
the
I'll tell you.
code. Yeah,
I got some other
good.
code cracking stuff that I'd like to share with
Crack
you
it.
for
Go
sure.
for it.
But I will say, just as a great side note for our listeners, something that's important to know about Mary Lyn and language. You're in the conversation. We're in the conversation right now of language and putting your words to something, and the power of words is that Mary Lyn wrote a book. She's an author of a book called The Transformative Power of Language. What year did you write that book, Mary Lyn?
I wrote it in 2000. It was published in 2019. And nothing holds more true today than that book. Now, granted, you and I know each other because of a lot of in-depth work in the yoga world. But I always like to share with people, it was a yoga world unlike most yoga worlds. It was actually the yoga world of really the language of leadership and using the skill set, the tool of yoga in the classroom physically to pull people into a language of leadership for themselves, personal responsibility. And, and how that can actually be a guiding point in your life, a North Star for your life, really to listen for who am I in the say of the matter of my life, and all through the tool of yoga, the practice of yoga. And so the book was really born out of, a lot of, decades really of being on my mat and being in the experience of just that, like how do we put language to the experience that can be born out of the work that we got, I think, on the mat. So there is a nod to, people on their mat in the book and that sort of thing. But really my challenge was to simplify something that I think can be really, really conceptual, and language and the impact of language and speaking and, the power of speaking and connecting through speaking and all of that. It can sound sort of concepty. And so it is I think it's a really great handbook, whether you practice yoga or, not, it doesn't matter. It's a great handbook just for some real simplified actions to take with your speaking that provide anybody a sort of a next level of connection through their speaking. And so that's why I wrote it, because, it was sort of born, of course, out of years and years of teaching and business ownership, and then just really recognizing, like, well, this is actually a product of moving on my mat. I studied journalism, and art and things like that. So, I realize now, like, it's actually a long trail of crumbs that got me to write the book. But really the content inside of the book, a lot of it is, it references the kind of time that you and I used to spend together on the mat. So.
And a big part of the book, I know you speak to the power of listen. Well, I'll paraphrase it in ways that I've heard it, but in listening to the words that are coming out of your mouth, actually, there is an ability for us to listen to the words that are coming out of our mouth, and our words create our life, create our world. How would you say that transforming your language and writing this book about the transformative power of language impacted your life?
Well, I have to say this is one of my favorite things about change. Anne Lamott, and if you don't, do you read anything from Anne Lamott? She's written a bunch of great books. But she says change happens poorly, barely, and slowly. That's her definition of change. Change happens poorly, barely, and slowly.
I like that.
And so I know. Well, it's pretty true too. So
true.
when we're inside of the context of change, whether it's, I mean, you know, obvious things like changing, you know, no muscle to muscle, and we want to work out more and we want to gain muscles, or changing, you know, our sleep patterns. We're night owls, but we know we need to sleep more, you know, any change. And then those are just like physical changes. So when we think about language changes or mental changes, how we think, those patterns are so deep rooted. Our language stems 100% from things that have impacted us along the way, how we've learned how to operate because of those impacts. If we're afraid, we restrain our language. If we're nervous, you know, your go-to pattern may be you talk a lot, you know, to cover up your nervousness. So I think, you know, and then a whole slew of other things, right? Like just how we were brought up because of having, you know, a mom in the house all the time, or didn't have a dad, or didn't have a mom, or, you know, whatever, you know, all the impacts that over time are cultivated not only in the body and in the spirit, but how we communicate as a result of that. So I think writing the book, it's funny that you're asking this, because to get to the question, my editor, who was this amazing woman, Sarah Stivitz, she was like, I'm going through this as I'm editing your book. And I was like, well, I don't know how you couldn't go through it. You know, it's almost like, and what a powerful example of what it probably is like to be an editor of a book. You know, if you're receiving someone's content and then you're having to edit it, how could she not kind of go through the experience of, you know, the impact of language in her life too. So, but all that to say that writing the book got me clear, as I believe writing anything. It's why journaling is such a powerful tool. Taking notes can be a really powerful tool. Writing the book got me more clear on why speaking and considering language as impactful, really, what am I trying to say? It is the key to change. It is the key to change. If we can start listening to what we say, that's the first step. And then if we listen on top of what we say, how we say it, you know, is it really with what I value at my core, meaning like my tone of voice? If what I value at my core, because we love saying stuff like this, don't we, Nick? Like, my core values are love, fun, joy, laughter, you know? Well, in reality, if I'm actually speaking from what I value at my core, if I'm speaking to you and I say I value love, and now I'm speaking with the tone of love, just listen for how different the whole conversation could go. If I'm in an argument, and really where we see it most is if I'm in an argument with somebody that I love, who obviously isn't a woman my own age. No, I'm just kidding. But if I'm in a conversation with a woman that's older than me, or a friend, or my spouse, or my child, right? And an argument that is like they're not seeing eye to eye with me, I don't see eye to eye with them, which is really where this plays out. When we're all getting along, it's great, right? So, but that's not really reality. We're not always getting along. So when we're in controversy, when we're in a place where things aren't going well, if I can remember what I value at my core and the tone of voice that I'm using, instead of being sarcastic or being condescending, or because so often I think we can get pretty good at sounding good. And I know that from experience. Like I've heard people say, wow, you just got up there and you just like said it and it sounded so good. And I'm like, yeah. And call me out if I ever start sounding fake, because that's what we don't want to do. We language is something that I think can be mastered for sure. How we share can be more impactful when we know how to speak, but that's kind of a superficial part of language. The rest of the story is, how am I speaking into these people? How am I sharing with my son? How am I navigating this challenge with my daughter? Am I flying off the handle? And though I sound really good, but I'm still flying off the handle. It's the book confronted me in a nutshell, confronted me, because in no way, shape, or form have I mastered what I wrote about. It's a great handbook for me. Mm-hmm. It's a great handbook for me. And it's something that I think has to be practiced 100% of the time. And usually the person, what I've learned in writing that book, usually the person writing it is the person who needs to be practicing it the very most. So, yeah.
So would you say that how you speak to yourself is how you speak to other people?
I mean, I think both and. I think that when something is made verbal, it's potentially brought more to life because it's out there. It's out in sound waves. Somebody heard it. Even I heard myself say it out loud. So I think that thought is, yes, both and. I think that we want to be careful what we say, because if it's in our thinking and we say it, it lives. It's really brought to life in language. But the thinking, I mean, this is going deep, I think, thinking is, we can say lost in thought, and we really can get lost in thought. And I think that the way to interrupt lost in thought is to do just that. Like, man, I'm really getting lost in thought. And sometimes that has to happen verbally. Like, man, my thoughts are all over the place. Like, I'm not feeling good about myself today. I'm feeling, discouraged, like to bring it to life, what your thinking mind is spinning in. I think that can interrupt it. But I think there's also, to not get caught up in your thought and speak everything that you think, because it does come to life when we speak it. Does that make sense? Is that the answer to the question?
That's your answer to the question, and I love the answer to the question. A couple things I take from that are the power of speaking my feelings when they're occurring as a way to um, to reduce their power over me. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that I get from that, and also to be smart and place importance on the words that we choose to share, because our words, when put into the world, manifest in a way what it is that we want or we don't want. That's what I'm hearing you say in some way, shape, or form.
Well, here's, like, for example, I may be thinking, and I mean, I've done this. We all do this, but I'll stick with me because I know me best. Holy cow, I don't know how I'm going to get all this done today. That could be my thought. I wake up, I do all the things, and then I'm in overwhelm. Well, I do believe that there's power. There's authority in a sense in me just saying what I'm thinking is X, Y, and Z versus I am so overwhelmed. Because I think if I declare I'm overwhelmed, I don't know how I'm going to get all this done today, I really, in a sense, I set the pathway. I just started step 1 of my pathway for the day. And I think that the interruption is almost to just really caution myself in a healthy way. Don't say that, Mary Lyn. You're actually, maybe there is a taste of overwhelm, but let's just call it, I'm thinking, my thinking right now is, this could be overwhelming. I'm experiencing that right now, but I actually don't want to set my pathway for my whole day to be in overwhelm. And I think that, golly, think about all the things. I mean, that's kind of a simple example, but just think about all the things that I think are a thought that turns to language that then creates the whole scenario.
Yeah. You know what? I actually had this thought that I'm turning to language right now that may create a scenario.
Yeah, what? It will. Watch out. It gets weird.
I can see myself, like, I have lots of thoughts, some shit I don't want other people to hear, and a lot of shit that I don't want to manifest. And so I can see me being in the closet with the kids and Katie in the different room, and me just having a solid conversation with myself, like a straight up bro talk, Nick to Nick, like, this is what's happening for me right now. And in an honest way, like having a good solid conversation with myself as a way to get rid of the overwhelm or whatever it is that's on my mind, so that I can go about my day in a way that's like normal.
Hey,
you know what I mean?
I don't think it's so weird. I don't think that's so weird at all. I will say this, and this is something that I've learned just kind of more in, because since the book's been written, I've loved continued study on just more of the psychology of the brain and the psychology behind language and things like that. So, and by the way, it always makes me want to just go back to the simplicity of the book too, because I think we can get so caught up in all of that side of things too. But the first download, and I think this was such value to me. So I think it's valuable to say the first download for the brain is through writing. And so when the brain is in overwhelm, or like there's so much to do, or yada, 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 it not only is it, and we sort of know this, because think about how many times we had to journal on questions in leadership development or trainings or programs, or students that we have, like, pull out your journal and journal on this question. Well, there's science behind that. The brain actually gets to focus on less jumble, less chaos, if it gets written down first and then spoken. And I think that a lot of times our minds they're just going nonstop. And so if we try to put language to it, it is kind of a mess. And think about the results of stuff like that. Argument, huge arguments. Like, I'm so mad at you. I mean, we say things that we don't mean to say, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So it's not like any of this is rocket science, you know, especially when you look at it in the context of business partners, relationships that matter, you know, parenting, marriage, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I am so ticked off right now. And I actually know, just go work it out and write some things down first. We know, just take a second before you spout it off. But a lot of times that's not the habit that we've provided ourselves with. And so we spout it off first from the
Yeah.
brain out through the mouth, and then there's regret. There's either regret or like a fire started, you know, like something really, like what just happened, door slam and that sort of. So there's a lot of power, I think, in applying. Of course, there's power in applying things that we know, but then making them a part of our routine. And you know, like we always look for the right time to talk about things. That's part of it. But really, you know, more times than not, it's just, am I really getting caught up in my thinking and I'm really quick to spit out some words, or let me go be with my thinking for a little while and journal on it. And that download actually starts kind of unraveling overthinking.
Yeah, I would say that's the development of a very positive habit, the habit of, I mean, if you want to call it a habit, but like
Yeah.
a positive habit to understand and to be grounded enough to know that when you have those emotions coming up, that you have the tool and the ability to slow down and to write down what it is that you're experiencing, or to just take a step away and to breathe and write down and speak out loud a little bit more consciously what it is that's coming up for you, you know. And I think that actually one of the show topics that we talked about talking about on the show hey, we
I
talked
know
about talking
you're
about it.
you're never the
Yeah,
same after talking about language. You're just never the same. It just
especially
messes
with
with you
somebody
so
who wrote
much.
a book on it. Yeah, especially with somebody who wrote a book on it. Wow. Oh my goodness. But we talk about
Uh,
dreaming, the difference between dreaming and achieving. So in this realm, where I'm coming from to continue the conversation on language is like, you know, somebody may be listening to this or may think, oh yeah, that sounds great. Like to be able to control my emotions, to know, okay, my emotions are at a level that I need to like take some time for myself. You know, that maybe that works for you, but boy, like I don't have the ability to do that. Like, so how do you work with people, or what do you suggest for people to turn their dreaming of being more grounded to
mm.
release before they speak to someone into more of an achievement, like something where that it's a positive habit where they know that they need to take that time for themselves so they can actually communicate in a way that makes a difference?
Mm. Well, I mean, really, the short answer, the simple answer is action precedes change. Always. You know, if somebody wants to change, we're kind of going back to what we just said, what I said a couple of minutes ago. But if you want to change your language, your thoughts, you know, being lost in thought, um, anything in a routine, bad habits to good habits, action precedes change. So I can't just think about it all the time. I have to take action. Now, where I think people get stumped is like, to your point, like, well, that might work for you, but what, you know, like, what is the how to? And the how to is action and being consistent with that action. And I think that that's like, I mean, look at, you know, look, don't even get me started. I mean, on, but you're not, I'm getting myself started right now. You know, it's like, well, I couldn't lose the weight. So now I've chosen to take, you know, this pill that'll get the weight off of me faster. Well, and not that there's anything wrong with that, if that's what you need. But if the weight didn't come off because you wanted the weight to come off and there was not a consistency in your choice of habit, then what do we expect? What were the expectations? No, and there's always, of course, I leave room for grace. Of course, there's always the percentage chance that the habit was there and the routine happened and it just didn't work. But generally speaking, action precedes change. And if it's an action that I am staying consistent with and persistent with and committed to, and taking personal responsibility for, then I can expect something to be different. I really, really, truly believe that. And the action, so I coach women for a living. And I think that the gap that I see, not 50% of the time, it's 100% of the time. The gap that I see between dreaming, like I've been dreaming of this my whole life and dreaming of achieving X, Y, and Z, whatever the business is that they want to build, or I've been dreaming of speaking to 1,000 people on stage and writing a book, or I've been dreaming of starting a podcast, or whatever the dream has been, or I've just been dreaming of, making 6 figures and I know that I'm capable of that. Whatever the dream has been, the gap between the dream and the achieving is I want the change, but I'm not taking the action that precedes that change. And so I also understand, because I've been there before, that a lot of people do have the willingness to take action and they just don't know how to. And that's where you and I can probably equally speak to this. How to it's really great when you've got a great coach. It's really great when you have a great mentor. It's really great when you have someone who can, hold your dream with you and believe in what it is that you want to do and say, hey, I'm not going to give you all the answers, but I certainly can support you with some ways in order to drive this dream into achieving it. So I don't know if that's really answering the question. I know that when change isn't happening, I just turn the finger around. I'm like, well, what action are you taking, Mary Lyn? What action are you really committed to every day? And then, for the women that I work with, in a very loving way, I don't ever shake a finger and, a big stick. And I'm like, well, you're just not doing anything about it, But I think that it really is something that we have to be willing to confront that. If I want to achieve something, am I caught in some sort of pattern like that's just not possible? Well, it's not possible if you're not taking any consistent action towards it.
Mm-hmm. Is there conversations? You have conversations or place importance around why it is that people aren't taking the action?
Why they aren't?
Like why not? I mean, they may be capable, they may have an idea of where they want to go and whatnot, but how important is uncovering and understanding the why of them not doing it? Like the why, them being fearful, or like, I don't know. What do you think? What do you say about that?
Tell me one thing. Why you tell me one thing that in your life that you're like, I just hadn't done that, Mary Lyn, and then tell me why you haven't.
Gosh, thanks for putting me on the spot. I'll tell you. Well,
I mean, did you make your bed this morning?
I did not make my bed this morning.
Why didn't you make the bed? Because Katie was going to do it, or why?
Well, here's my answer, and I think that it's pretty valid, not just on the bed, but I think the reason why I didn't make my bed and the reason why I don't create the actions towards what I want to create in my life, like totally, like I do, but it's because it's not a part of my system. It's not what I don't say, I haven't written down and said, okay, when I wake up in the morning at 4:45 in the morning, which I do, the first step is to get my feet on the ground. The second step is to make that side of my bed quietly so I don't wake Katie up. And then I have a pattern that I go through every single morning, literally at 4:45. But part of that is that I haven't written down or even thought about the importance of making my bed. So if I want to take action towards it, for me, at least in the way I learn, I think it's important to have a system and to actually put thought into all the little details.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, you are extremely disciplined to get up at 4:45. That's amazing. That you want to consider that is a very small percentage of high performance individuals getting up and having a routine. So let's peel it back a little bit for the normal people.
Okay,
the normal people out there.
7:45.
Yeah,
the normal person.
Right.
I've been there. Can I say something real quick about that?
Yes.
Because we got to go back to bring it back to the normal everyday person. But the reason that I do that, the reason I wake up so early is because I was killing myself, Mary Lyn, literally. Man, just I lose breath when I think about it. But the boys would be in bed at 8 p.m. and it was that was the first time all day that I had time for myself, that I created time for myself. Katie's in bed, boys are in bed. And so what would I do? Oh, I'd go take the dogs on a walk. I'd smoke pot, drink a beer, you name it, whatever. I'd do some yoga. I'd get on the internet. I'd make a reel, all these things. Next thing you know, I go to bed at 12:30. And then I got 2 boys and a wife who went to bed at 8, and they wake up and they're excited about life. And I'm a total grouch and an asshole. And next thing you know, after years of doing that, it was killing me. I could just feel it. And I remember Owen just, a couple years ago when he just started to speak, and he's I said, dude, I'm sorry I snapped at you. And he's like, it's okay. Mom says that you go to bed late sometimes. And I was like, oh, even Owen gets it. It's interrupting my relationship. So that's why I created a new system to go to bed. I go to bed at 10. I wake up at 4:45, and it was challenging at first because I was so tired at night. I was so tired during the day because I was having a hard time going to bed at night because I was so programmed to stay up late. But ultimately, it just became natural for me because I created the systems and I stuck to it. So that's what happened for me, and it's really changed everything for me. And I don't really, I care about what I do in my professional life. I do. I don't know exactly what it will look like in the future. I don't exactly know what my biggest dreams are per se, but I do know a biggest dream is to be the very best person that I can be on the planet. And it has helped me be that opposed to where I was. So anyway, back to the normal person who maybe gets up a little bit later and wants to make their bed.
Yeah. Well, you know what you just said. Not to put everything that we say into a framework for people to drop themselves into, but what you said is the only reason why the first step of the first action is going to start. Action precedes change. The action is only going to happen, and you just said it, because the pain was deep enough. That is the only reason why the normal 7:45 in the morning person is going to finally take action. And, it's depending on the person, it's a varying degree of pain, right? I have some women who they'll come to me for help in their business, and they're just like to your point, I am so exhausted, and I know I have something here. I'm just so exhausted. I'm making, beans, and I know I could make a living doing what I can provide the world with, but I'm just beating my head against it. That's pain. It's pain doing something for 7-8 years and not really seeing their, you know, the dream becoming something that they can achieve and move them forward. Pain could also be, you know, like, I am so exhausted. I'm so exhausted. I'm not sleeping, you know, so it's like, what am I going to do about it? I think no matter what it is, whether it's, you know, business, health, relationships, there's a breaking point. It's awful that it really is that way, but I think that the vast majority of the normal people, and we're all normal until we're at the bottom of whatever that bottom is, you know, we're probably not going to take action. And, you know, one of my like total go-tos, James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits.
Oh, that's an awesome book. Yes.
Oh, it's like, seriously, I mean, I hate to hype it up so much because it's got so much hype already, but it really is so great about, it's just a reminder of compounding habits. And one of the scenarios that he uses is just about like, I need to walk. Well, for a lot of people in the world, including me, like I remember being like, really, I'm going to start walking every day. I already work out. I'm already so disciplined. I'm already, you know, like da 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 da. I can validate, and we're good. We're all good at that. We can validate our life and how we talk. We can validate it all until the cows come home. Yeah. But I remember thinking, I need a walk. And here's why. I live on the ocean. I'm not even taking advantage of it. I want to just clear my head. I want time away from my phone, away from problem solving. And I also know I want to practice what I preach. I know that time in nature and time off of headphones and, you know, podcasts and things like that, and even out of books, just me being in nature, that stirs our creativity. So I was like, okay, that was pain for me. I knew what I wanted. I wanted that change. I know that action precedes change. And I even got to my own how-to. My how-to was, I'm just going to walk. Well, I can't just walk once a month. I've got to put my running shoes out by my bed tomorrow. And then I see the running shoes, you know, and it's like, well, I'm not going to walk today, but there are my running shoes if I want to put them on. Put them out the next day. I see my running shoes. I'm just going to put my shoes on. You know, it's the compounding effort over time. And then it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight at all. The shoes came out. Things got busy. You know, things get in the way. I can validate till the cows come home. Well, I wanted to be home with my family at sunset instead of going for a walk. But then eventually, you know, that pain and that compounding effort of seeing the shoes and then putting them on and then making it out my front door and then getting to the ocean front, I was like, what is wrong with me? Why don't I just do this every day for 10 minutes? And then 10 minutes over time has become 45 minutes. And then the beauty of it, and this is the part that I'm most proud of, now my daughter, oh my gosh, my daughter wants to walk with me, you know, at sunset. And it's such, you know, those are the things I think that, of course, like that's like a, you know, transformation story, and they don't all end that way. But I do believe that what you're speaking to is, it's the picture perfect framework for why we actually end up on the side of change, which is what so many people say in language. I want the change. Action precedes the change. Fact. Okay, well, what action are you going to take, Nick? Because you stay up all night, you're smoking pot, you're drinking beer, you're doing pipe, you know? Right? Katie was probably like, I mean, you're wasting time. Why don't you just go to bed, you know?
Jesus, always. She's like, why don't you go to bed? I'm like, why are you giving me shit about not going to bed?
Right.
You know, like totally angry, totally
You have to get to it on your own.
Yeah.
You got to get to it on your own.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, what lives inside of that, which is, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Yeah.
The thing that lives inside of that for you and inside of the shoes for me is you discovered, right? You cracked your code.
Code cracking.
You're code cracking again. Like,
Here
oh my gosh, this works for me. I get to like live really fully doing this. And that, walking every day, even if it's just, I mean, some days it really is like 20 minutes. Some days it's like an hour and 20 minutes, and I still reap the benefit because it's that compounded effort over time of just giving myself, same for you. Like you start realizing like, oh, I'm discovering something about how I get to live more fully because I give myself this,
Yeah.
And it gives other people stuff too. That's really the whole flip side of the story, which really becomes the whole story, is that you actually get to be so much more for your kids. And that brings you, it's funny, isn't it? You get to be so much more for them, but it's all for you too.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's so cool you mentioned that about your daughter. I actually this morning I did my regular routine and whatnot. Owen woke up. He's got this like erector set thing he was working on, and he's like, "Let's do it." And I'm like, "Great." So I'm like, and they're trying to screw these little tiny 4mm screws in with my big sausage fingers, and he's like, he said to me, he's like, "You know what, Dad?" And I said, "What?" And he's like, "I'm really lucky that you're my dad." I was like, "Thanks, man." Like interesting, because it's one of those things that I don't know, but I don't think it would have been said or heard in as powerful a way as it was this morning if I hadn't have made shifts in my life. He maybe wouldn't have said that before, and maybe he would have, but it wouldn't have been heard in the same way, because I can tell that my actions that I've put into place to create change are being noticed, and even if he doesn't know what I do, like he's like, "Hey, I got an idea, Nick, maybe you could wake up before Mom and you could do this." And I'm thinking,
yeah,
I'm up like if an hour before Mom. He doesn't know that, but anyway.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Nick, that's
pretty cool.
Hey, look at me. Way to go. So great.
Thank you.
Really. The thing I think that can get lost every day is that we're not going to be here forever. And there is, whether it's, a client, a student, a spouse, your kids, there is somebody that's watching, that actually we're passing the baton. We are every day. It's not like at the end of our life we get to pass the baton. We're passing it every single day. Yeah. So way to go, Dad.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll pat myself on the back.
Yeah,
if I can reach back there. I need some extra shoulder stretches.
That's good. He's watching. So good.
Well, you know what else was interesting? I'll share with you if you don't mind.
I want you to.
Well, what I realized too, part of it for me is like, why is it that I'm disassociated from my body? Like I talked about smoking weed, drinking beer, and that became a kind of a habit for me for a while. And what was interesting, I was like doing this, my self-inquiry work and writing and different things. I'm like, why am I disassociating from my body? And when I was a sophomore in college, I remember my brother and I and my family, we were watching a football game. We were watching Nebraska versus the Buffaloes. My cousin's family was from Nebraska. My family is from Colorado. We always got together and watched that. Well, my brother and I were drinking that night. Anyway, long story short, my uncle was there with us. But the next morning I woke up to my dad and my brother knocking on my door at my condo, and to let me know that my uncle had been killed in a drinking and driving accident. And he had been drinking. He was the one that was driving, and there was 2 other people with him. And I just remember at that moment in life, that was my first experience of death, was this like traumatic, horrible thing. I remember I dropped to my knees. I felt it in my gut. It was horrible. And then all the months and years after that of, like helping my aunt clean out her closet and take my uncle's clothes that she wanted to get rid of that may fit me, or, working with and being around my cousins who no longer had a dad, who had gone through this really traumatic experience as well. And all the years of doing that, what ended up happening for me, and I only noticed this later on in life, is that I started disassociating with my body, because what I wanted more than anything, what I wanted to avoid in my life was losing someone that was close to me. It was the hardest experience ever. And so by disassociating with my body, what I realized that I was doing is I was not allowing other people to love me fully, and I was not allowing myself to love other people fully, because I thought from my experience that they could be ripped away from me at any point in time, and I did not want to have it hurt as bad. Mm-hmm. And so I disassociated because I thought that was the best way to protect myself. And like the way underneath, like, of why I needed to shift, of course, like, that was from my experience, right? But now that I'm seeing that I'm in a different pattern and I'm doing things differently, I'm realizing how amazing it is to allow other people to love you 100%, and how great it feels to love people 100%. And, along the way, death will happen here and there, and it's going to be hard. It's a part of life. But it's not worth living in fear of other people dying, in the sense that I have to disassociate with myself so that I can't love people to the fullest, So that's interesting, huh?
Well, and change happens poorly and barely and slowly. And so I know, even just hearing you say all that, and I'm so sorry that was something that you had to go through. And I know that your change to even get to speak to it in the way that you just did, that didn't happen overnight. To actually be able to see the impact, to be with it, to mourn the loss, all of that. We're in such a we're just in such a microwave society that, I think a lot of times mourning the loss of something and how it impacts us and how we respond to it it's overlooked. And so I hope you gave yourself time, and even still it might come up, just to mourn the loss, to mourn the loss. That's part of the process. That's part of change happening barely and slowly, is, to when there's loss, to give our bodies opportunity to mourn it. And I'm really sorry all that happened, but it sounds as though you've cracked some more of your code because of what you were given.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I'm like, there is emotion that still comes up when I speak, but it's I think it's relatable. And it also, when I share my story in that sense, which I haven't a whole lot, for me, it's, it takes the right person in the right forum to share something like that. But it definitely is, in some way, shape, or form, I think people can relate to that. And it's, it's true. And so, I don't know. What I'm curious about is, does this fall in line with what a cornerstone conversation is? What is a cornerstone?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it's pretty corny stone. Seems like it's pretty cornerstone.
It might be corny. I don't know. Well, I think if there's anybody listening that is, managing people, and really, you don't get to manage people. You get to manage conversations of those people. We really have no control over people on our teams or in our businesses, or, if you have clients, or, any sort of situation like that. I didn't come up with it, but it's something that I use. So yeah, I mean, and it may be something now that people that are listening, they're going to be like, Nick got that from that podcast, girl, on that. But a cornerstone conversation is, I think it's kind of to come full circle back to language, and allowing people this is more of like a business conversation, I would say, a client conversation, or like a contract. Like if you're working with someone, Nick, on a particular project or something like that, right? it's to actually get in language something that starts the relationship from a clear foundation. And it ultimately, it sets the tone. You know, when you think about why there's breakdowns between, you know, team members, or a client agreement, or I mean anything really out there in the world, when you hire someone, or I can generally look back and see, oh, I see exactly why that didn't go well. You know, I mean, I forgot to, yeah, I can have all the validating reasons of they didn't show up the way they should have, but really, you know, we want to start looking at what is it that's inside of my control? What is my responsibility in the say of the matter of this, you know, and how could I make it work? So there's 5 questions. And the first question is, you know, it could be something like, if not, maybe it doesn't work in a setting like this because we're good friends, and, you know, we might create something more together where this is important, but for a podcast, not necessarily. But the first question is, what's your best? What's your best? If I was onboarding someone onto my team, you get how when I ask someone what's their best, there's a secret in it for me. You know, I get to actually hear what they think their best is. And then sort of the side note questions are, when do you shine and when do you flow? You know, what is it that you believe is like your shining moment? You feel like, God, this is when I shine the very most. It's when I'm, you know, serving people good food, or what, you know. But we give someone that we either want to establish a relationship with, or someone that we want to establish a really good working relationship with. We give them an opportunity to really share what they believe their best is. When do they shine and when do they flow? And then the second question is, what are your practices and what are your preferences? And I think that, you know, especially when we're going into, you know, I use these questions as a coach in a business coach setting, but I also use them, you know, in hiring on team members. Just asking someone, what are your preferences, lets me inside of their world in terms of when they feel most available to do the job at hand. I know my golden hour, my preference is kind of like you, not 4:45 in the morning yet, but my golden hour, my golden time, my preference for work, for conversations, for speaking, for coaching, for any of it is first thing in the morning. You know, I'm my best. That's my preference. And then my practices, you know, that also gives me an opportunity to really listen for, you know, I don't want to put anybody on the spot to feel like they have to lie about their practices, but it's like, well, gosh, what are my practices? What are the practices in my life that actually allow me to feel fulfilled? And so I'm giving a person that, you know, that I want to create a relationship with, a working relationship with, a contract, an agreement with, an opportunity to answer that. And that supports both of us is ultimately what we're doing. The third question is, what can you learn from past successful relationships? What can you learn from past successful relationships? And again, like, this is all like kind of coming full circle. So it definitely applies. I think when we speak things, it brings life to it. And so if I tell you from past successful relationships, one of the things that I've learned is ask a question and then shut up and let them have an opportunity to answer the question. That's a really valuable thing, you know, to hold as something that I've learned. And I'm probably more than likely going to carry that forward into future relationships to make them successful. what can you learn from past frustrating relationships? And I think that's really important, because so often I think when you're going into a working setting with someone, oh my gosh, if I had a penny for every time I hired the perfect person for the job, or the perfect, team member, or, well, it's because you are like buzzing when you find somebody, but you're also generally not talking about when it's going to get hard, because inevitably it is. If you're starting a marriage with someone and you want to go somewhere in the business, or in that relationship, it's not always going to be easy. So to give them an opportunity to share what they learned from past frustrating relationships about themselves, about that frustrating relationship. And then the last question is, how will we fix things when they go wrong? That's the money question, to really give anybody that you're working with over long-term work, contract work and agreement work, team members. How will we fix things when they go wrong? It gives an opportunity to the conversation in language to go ahead and be verbalized. Like, I need space first. If you'll give me a day when something goes wrong, if you'll just give me a day, that would be appreciated. And then I want us to speak straight. And in private, I'd really appreciate it if you would just, like, if I do something wrong, or if you do something wrong, can we be in agreement right out of the gate to fix it, to move out of the breakdown, that we meet each other behind closed doors, not in front of other people, or in front of, customers, or, whatever. And just by speaking those questions and by giving opportunity to answer those questions, something is created. Because we know that bringing things to language, it creates. And now, do we mess up every day? Are we going to nail it, first time? Maybe not. But as that becomes a compounded habit, cornerstone questions for people that we want to work with and do life with in working settings, I think it begins to cause a culture to be created around us, which is really powerful.
Oh, I love it. I think it's so important. It's a cornerstone conversation. It's got to happen. Got to happen at the beginning.
Yeah.
Then you can revisit it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Sets I think it sets the tone for it all. Just for an understand. It's like a 30-minute speed dating, but in a more impactful way.
It'd be a weird thing to pull out on your first date, but like, hey,
yeah, don't do that.
All right, before we head to the movie, we're going to have this cornerstone conversation. Okay.
Yeah,
well, right. I mean, it actually could be very valuable if you were in a, preparing for a relationship and you want to know
absolutely.
those things. Yeah. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't.
Yeah.
You could kind of figure out some things.
What's your
early
best?
On. Yeah, that's right. Okay, you're a morning person. Okay, great. So am I.
Yeah,
boom.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Check
one
that
of
box.
one. Bam. If we get 5 out of 5, I'll even buy you the popcorn.
Oh gosh.
People, I did not mention, but I want to make sure that I mention that Mary Lyn Jenkins is I would say you're the founder of the Big Fish Co. And I will put the Big Fish Co.'s website, livebigfishco.com, in the show notes. But what I love is your tagline, coaching for the creative woman, ready to shift your struggle into your superpower and create a business that matters. Big Fish Co., Mary Lyn Jenkins.
Wow. You're hired. You are hired.
Y'all need to hit her up. And even if you just hit her up to tell her how amazing she has been on this podcast and how she's enriched your life, please do that. I know another thing you should hit her up about is restarting her podcast because you are so naturally great with sharing, and I love hearing your voice. And I know that in speaking to you, obviously, about the transformative power of language, your book, and you sharing from your experience in life, that hearing your words and the vibration around your words through a podcast or any way, shape, or form would be transformative for other people. So thank you, Mary Lyn.
Thank you so much, Nick.
You're
the man. I've loved this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Everything. Well, I think it'd be really cool to do it again sometime. I think, there's some people you do shows with and whatnot, or there's some people I do shows with that I just really can spitball things back and forth with. And you're one of those people. So we should do it again sometime.
Yeah, let's do. This was like scratch the surface.
Scratch.
We got lots of deep stuff we could talk about. No, we got lots of great things we could talk about.
We certainly do.
I'd love it. Yeah, anytime.
Is there anything that you would like to say to the audience, or anything that we missed that you'd like to cover before we wrap up this episode, Mary Lyn?
I think you said it all. I'm just gonna hang on the sweet words that you said. But if anybody wants to track me down, livebigfishco.com is the site for everything that I do. And Instagram, I'm really proud of myself. Talk about like taking some action to create change. I'm late to the game, but I am working with someone who, it's always good to work with people who know more than you. And so I'm working with someone who knows more than me. I've learned so much from her. And my approach really to Instagram beginning this month hasn't started yet, but I did start taking the action steps. It's really to just be such a genuine platform to provide people with, like cornerstone questions and things that add value. And I know there's a million Instagram accounts out there that do that. I just haven't been one. And I really I've wanted to investigate that more as an offering. And so if people want to follow me on Instagram and get excited about what's to come over there, it's Live Big Fish Co. So I would love to see you on Instagram as well. But that's it. Just let's do it again, Nick. I'd love that.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll put your Instagram in the show notes as well. Okay. And again, your website, it's beautiful.
You're sweet. Thank you.
There is something to be said, though, as an ending note. I think that social media could be used in a very positive way. And I think, also it could be used like anything in a way that disrupts your patterns or is not so healthy. But I think it's inspiring more and more to see people using it in a healthy and empowering way. So I'm certainly excited to jump on and follow you.
Thank you, my friend.
You got it. Thank you, everyone, for a great show. Mary Lyn, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
See you, my friend.